Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes for Story Time, and we continue today with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. We begin with Chapter 11, All by Electricity. Sir, said Captain Nemo, showing me the instruments hanging on the walls of his room, here are the contrivances required for the navigation of the Nautilus. Here, as in the drawing room, I have them always under my eyes, and they indicate my position and exact direction in the middle of the ocean. Some are known to you, such as the thermometer, which gives the internal temperature of the Nautilus, the barometer, which indicates the weight of the air and foretells the changes of the weather, the hydrometer, which marks the dryness of the atmosphere, the storm glass, the contents of which, by decomposing, announce the approach of tempests, the compass, which guides my course, the sextant, which allows the latitude by the altitude of the sun, chronometers, by which I calculate the longitude, and glasses for day and night, which I use to examine the points of the horizon when the Nautilus rises to the surface of the waves. These are the usual nautical instruments, I replied, and I know the use of them, but these others no doubt answer to particular requirements of the Nautilus. This dial with the movable needle, is it a manometer? Is it not? It is actually a manometer, but by communication with the water, whose external pressure it indicates, it gives our depth at the same time. And these other instruments, the use of which I cannot guess, here, Professor, I ought to give you some explanations. Will you be kind enough to listen to me? He was silent for a few moments. Then he said, there is a powerful agent, obedient, rapid, easy, which conforms to every use and reigns supreme on board my vessel. Everything is done by means of it. It lights it, warms it, and is the soul of my mechanical apparatus. This agent is electricity. Electricity, I cried in surprise. Yes, sir. Nevertheless, Captain, you possess an extreme rapidity of movement, which does not agree with the power of electricity. Until now, its dynamic force has remained under restraint and has only been able to produce a small amount of power. Professor, said Captain Nemo, my electricity is not everybody's. You know what seawater is composed of. In 1,000 grams are found 96.5% of water and about 2 2/3% of chloride and sodium. Then, in a smaller quantity, chlorides of magnesium and potassium, bromide of magnesium, sulfite of magnesia, sulfate of carbonate of lime. You see, then, the chloride of sodium forms a large part of it. So it is this sodium that I extract from seawater, and of which I compose my ingredients. I owe all to the ocean. It produces electricity, and electricity gives heat, light, motion, and in a word, life to the Nautilus. But not the air you breathe. Oh, I could manufacture the air necessary for my consumption, but it is useless, because I go up to the surface of the water when I please. However, if electricity does not furnish me with air to breathe, it works at least the powerful pumps that are stored in spacious reservoirs, and which enable me to prolong at need, and as long as I will, my stay in the depths of the sea. It gives a uniform and unintermittent light, which the sun does not. Now, look at this clock. It is electrical, and goes with the regularity that defies the best chronometers. I have divided it into 24 hours, like the Italian clocks, because for me there is neither night nor day, sun nor moon, but only that factitious light that I take with me to the bottom of the sea. Look, just now, it is 10 o'clock in the morning. Exactly. Another application of electricity. This dial hanging in front of us indicates the speed of the Nautilus. An electric thread puts its communication with the screw, and the needle indicates the real speed. Look now, we are spinning along with a uniform speed of 15 miles an hour. It is marvelous, And I see, Captain, you were right to make use of this agent that takes the place of wind, water, and stream. We have not finished, Mr. Arnault, said Captain Nemo, rising. If you will follow me, we will examine the stern of the Nautilus. Really, I knew already the anterior part of the submarine boat, of which is the exact division, starting from the ship's head, the dining room 5 yards long, separated from the library by watertight partition, the library 5 yards long, the large drawing room 10 yards long, separated from the captain's room by a second watertight partition, the said room 5 yards in length, mine 2.5 yards, and lastly a reservoir of air 7.5 yards that extended to the bows. Total length 35 yards, or 150 feet. The partitions had doors that were shut hermetically by means of an India rubber instrument and ensured the safety of the Nautilus in case of a leak. I followed Captain Nemo through the waist and arrived at the center of the boat. There was a sort of, that opened between two partitions, an iron ladder fastened with an iron hook to the partition that led to the upper end. I asked the captain what the ladder was used for. It leads to a small boat, he said. What have you, a boat? I exclaimed in surprise. Of course, an excellent vessel, light and insubmersible, that serves either as a fishing or as a pleasure boat. But then, when you wish to embark, you are obliged to come to the surface of the water. Not at all. The boat is attached to the upper part of the hull of the Nautilus and occupies a cavity made for it. It is decked, quite watertight, and held together by solid bolts. The ladder leads to the manhole where the hull of the Nautilus that corresponds with the similar hole made in the side of the boat. By this double opening, I get into the small vessel. They shut the door, one belonging to the Nautilus. I shut the other by means of a screw pressure. I undo the bolts, and the little boat goes up to the surface of the sea with prodigious rapidity. I then open the panel of the bridge, carefully shut it, then I mast it, hoist my sail, take my oars, and I'm off. But how do you get back on board? I do not come back, Monsieur Arnault. The Nautilus comes to me. By your orders? By my orders. An electric thread connects us. I telegraph to it, and that is enough. Really, I said, astonished at these marvels, nothing can be more simple. After having passed the cage of the staircase that led to the platform, I saw a cabin of 6 feet long in which Conseil Ned Land, enchanted with the repast, were devouring it in avidity. Then a door opened into a kitchen 9 feet long, situated between large storerooms. There, electricity, better than gas itself, did all the cooking. The streams under the furnaces gave 2 sponges of Platinia a heat which was regularly kept up by and distributed. They also heated a distilling apparatus which, by evaporation, furnished excellent drinkable water. Near this kitchen was a bathroom comfortably furnished with hot and cold taps. Next to the kitchen was a bathroom, or a berthroom, of the vessel, 16 feet long, but the door was shut and I could not see the management of it, which might have given me the idea of a number of men employed on board the Nautilus. At the bottom was a 4th partition that separated this office from the engine room. A door opened and I found myself in the compartment where Captain Nemo, certainly an engineer of very high order, had ordered his locomotive machinery. This engine room, clearly lighted, did not measure less than 65 feet in length. It was divided into 2 parts. The first contained the material for producing electricity, the second the machinery that connected it with a screw. I examined it with great interest in order to understand the machinery of the Nautilus. You see, said Captain, I use Bunsen's contrivances, not Rumanoff's. Those would not have been powerful enough. Bunsen's are fewer in number, but stronger and large, which experience proved to be the best. The electricity produced passes forward where it works by electromagnets of great size, on the system of levers and cogs that transmit the movement to the axle of the screw. This one, the diameter of which is 19 feet, and the thread of 23 feet, performs about 120 revolutions in a second. And you get then a speed of 50 miles an hour. I have seen the Nautilus maneuver before the Abraham Lincoln, and I have my own ideas as to its speed. But this is not enough. We must see where we go. we must be able to direct it to the right, to the left, above and below. How do you get that great depth? Where do you find an increasing resistance, which is rated by hundreds of atmospheres? How do you return to the surface of the ocean? And how do you maintain yourselves in the requisite medium? Am I asking too much? Not at all, Professor, replied the captain with some hesitation. Since you may never leave this submarine boat, come into the saloon. It is our usual study, and there you will learn all you want to know about the Nautilus. Chapter 12. Some Figures. A moment after we were seated on a divan in the saloon smoking, the captain showed me a sketch that gave me the plan, section, and elevation of the Nautilus. Then he began his description in these words. Here, Monsieur Arnaud, are several dimensions of the boat you are in. It is an elongated cylinder with conical ends. It has a very much cigar shape. That is to say, the shape of it resembles a cigar, a shape already adopted in London in several constructions of the same sort. The length of the cylinder from stem to stern is exactly 232 feet, and its maximum breadth is 26 feet. It is not built quite like your long voyage steamers, but its lines are sufficiently long and its curves prolonged enough to allow the water to slide off easily and oppose no obstacle to its passage. These two dimensions enable you to obtain a simple calculation, the surface and cubic contents of the Nautilus. It is an area that measures 6,032 feet, and its contents about 1,500 cubic yards. That is to say, when completely submerged, it displaces 50,000 feet of water, or weighs 1,500 tons. When I made the plans for this submarine vessel, I meant that 9/10 should be submerged. Subsequently, it ought only to displace 9/10 of its bulk, that is to say, only to weigh that number of tons. I ought not, therefore, to have exceeded that weight, constructing it on the aforesaid dimensions. The Nautilus is composed of two hulls, one inside and the other outside, joined by T-shaped irons, which render it very strong. Indeed, owing to this cellular arrangement, it resists like a block, as if it were solid. Its sides cannot yield. It coheres spontaneously, and not by the closeness of its rivets and the homogeneity of its construction, due to the perfect union of the materials, enables it to defy the roughest seas. These two hulls are composed of steel plates, whose density is from 0.0 to 0.8 that of water. The first is not less than 2 inches, a half thick, and weighs 394 tons. The second envelope, the keel, 20 inches high and 10 thick, which weighs alone 62 tons. The engine, the ballast, the several accessories and apparatus appendages, the partitions and bulkheads weigh 961.62 tons. Do you follow this? I do. Then the Nautilus is afloat under these circumstances. 1/10 is out of the water. Now, if I have made my reservoirs of size equal to this 10th, or capable of holding 150 tons, and if I fill them with water, the boat weighing 1,507 tons will be completely immersed. That would happen, Professor. These reservoirs are in the lower parts of the Nautilus. I turn the taps and they fill, and the vessel sinks. That is just been below the level with the surface. Well, Captain, but now we come to the real difficulty. I can understand your rising to the surface, but diving below the surface, does not your submarine contrivance encounter a pressure and consequently undergo an upward thrust of 1 atmosphere for every 30 feet of water, just about 15 pounds per square inch? Just so, sir. Then unless you quite fill the Nautilus, I do not see how you can draw it down to those depths. Professor, you must not confound statistics with dynamics, or you will be exposed to grave errors. There is very little labor spent in attaining the lower regions of the ocean, for all bodies have a tendency to sink. When I wanted to find out the necessary increase of the weight required to sink the Nautilus, I had only to calculate the reduction of volume of that seawater that requires according to the depth. That is evident. Now, if water is not absolutely incomprehensible, it is at least capable of very slight compression. Indeed, almost Indeed, after the most recent calculations, this reduction is only 0.000436 of an atmosphere for each 30 feet of depth. If we want to sink 3,000 feet, I should keep account of the reduction of bulk under pressure equal to that of a column of water of 1,000 feet. The calculation is easily verified. Now, I have supplementary reservoirs capable of holding 100 tons. Therefore, I can sink to a considerable depth. When I wish to rise to the level of the sea, I only let off the water and empty all the reservoirs. If I want the Nautilus to emerge from the 10th part of her total capacity, I had nothing to object to these reasonings. I admit your calculations, Captain, I replied. I should be wrong to dispute them since daily experience confirms them, but I foresee a real difficulty in the way. What, sir? When you are about 1,000 feet deep, the walls of the Nautilus bear a pressure of 100 atmospheres. If then, just now, you were empty the supplementary reservoirs, to lighten the vessel, you must go to the surface, and the pumps must overcome the pressure of 100 atmosphere, which is 1,500 pounds per square inch. From that, a power of that electricity alone can give, said the captain hastily. I repeat, sir, that the dynamic power of my engines is almost infinite. The pumps of the Nautilus have an enormous power, as you must have observed when their jets of water burst like a torrent upon the Abraham Lincoln. Besides, I use subsidiary reservoirs only to attain a mean depth of 750 to 1,000 fathoms, and that with a view of managing my machines. Also, when I have a mind to visit the depths of the ocean, 5 or 6 miles below the surface, I make use of slower but not less infallible means. What are they, Captain? That involves my telling you how the Nautilus is worked. I am impatient to learn. To steer this boat to starboard or port, to turn, in a word, following a horizontal plan, I use an ordinary rudder fixed to the back of the stern post, and with one wheel and some tackle to steer by. But I can also make the Nautilus rise and sink and rise by a vertical movement by means of 2 inclined planes fastened to its side, opposite the center of flotation, planes that move in every direction and that are worked by powerful levers from the interior. If the planes are kept parallel to the boat, it moves horizontally. If slanted, the Nautilus, according to this inclination and under the influence of the screw, either sinks diagonally or rises diagonally as it suits me. And even if I wish to rise more quickly to the surface, I ship the screw, and the pressure of the water causes the Nautilus to rise vertically like a balloon filled with hydrogen. Bravo, Captain! But how can the steersman follow the route in the middle of the waters? The steersman is placed in a glazed box that is raised about the hull of the Nautilus and furnished with lenses. Are these lenses capable of resisting such pressure? Perfectly. Glass which breaks at a blow is nevertheless capable of offering considerable resistance. During some experiments of fishing by electric light, in 1864, in the northern seas, we saw plates less than 1/3 of an inch thick resist a pressure of 16 atmospheres. Now, the glass that I use is not less than 30 times thicker. Granted, but after all, in order to see, the light must exceed the darkness, and in the midst of darkness in the water, how can you see? Behind the steersman's cage is placed a powerful electric reflector, the rays from which light up the sea for half a mile in front. Ah, bravo, bravo, Captain! Now I can account for the phosphorescence in the supposed narwhal that puzzled us so. I now ask you, if the boarding of the Nautilus and the Scotia that has made such a noise has been the result of such rencontre? Quite accidental, sir. I was sailing only 1 fathom below the surface of the water. When the shock came, it had no bad result. None, sir. But now, about your rencontre with the Abraham Lincoln. Professor, I am sorry for one of the best vessels, the Abraham Lincoln, that the American Navy possesses, but they attacked me, and I was bound to defend myself. I contented myself, however, with putting the frigate hors de combat. She will not have any difficulty in getting repaired at the next port. Ah, Commander, your Nautilus is certainly a marvelous boat. Yes, Professor, and I love it as if it were part of myself. If danger threatens one of our vessels on the ocean, the first impression is the feeling of an abyss above and below. On the Nautilus, men's hearts never fail them. No defects to be afraid of, for the double shell is as firm as iron, no rigor to attend to, no sails for the wind to carry away, no boilers to burst, no fire to fear, for the vessel is made of iron, not wood, no coal to run short, for electricity is the only mechanical agent, no collision to fear, for it alone swims in deep water, no tempest to brave, for when it dives below the water it reaches absolute tranquility. There, sir, that is the perfection of vessels. And if it is to be true that the engineer has more confidence in the vessel than the builder, and the builder than the captain himself, you understand that the trust I repose in my Nautilus, for I am at once captain, builder, and engineer. But how could you construct such a wonderful vessel as this Nautilus? Is this some secret? Each separate portion, Monsieur Arnaud, was brought from different parts of the globe. The keel was forged in Croissat. The shaft of the screw at Pin and Company in London. The iron plates of the hull at Laird's of Liverpool. The screw itself at Scott's at Glasgow. The reservoirs were made by Cale and Company at Paris. The engine by Krupp in Prussia. Its beak in Motala's workshop in Sweden. Its mathematical instruments by Hart Brothers of New York, etc. And each of these people had my orders under different names. But these parts had to be put together and arranged. Professor, I had set up my workshops upon a desert island in the ocean. There my workmen, that is to say, the brave men that I instructed and educated and myself, have put together our Nautilus. Then, when the work was finished, fire destroyed all trace of our proceedings on this island, that I could have jumped over it if I had liked. Then the cost of this great vessel. Monsieur Arnaud, an iron vessel costs 45 pounds per ton. Now the Nautilus weighed 1,500 tons. It came therefore to 67,500 pounds, and 80,000 pounds more for fitting it up, and about 200,000 pounds with the works of art and collections it contains. One last question, Captain Nemo. Ask it, Professor. You are rich? Immensely rich, sir, and I could, without missing it, pay the national debt of France. I stared at the singular person who spoke thus. Was he playing upon my credulity? The future would decide that. Chapter 13. The Black River. The portion of the terrestrial globe which is covered by water is estimated at upwards of 80 million acres. This fluid mass comprises 2,250 millions of cubic miles, forming a spherical body of a diameter of 60 leagues, the weight of which would be 3 quintillions of tons. To comprehend the meaning of these figures, it is necessary to observe that a quintillion is to a billion as a billion is to unity. In other words, there are as many billions in a quintillion as there are units in a billion. This mass of fluid is equal to about the quantity of water which would be discharged by all the rivers of the earth in 40,000 years. During the geological epochs, the igneous period succeeded to aqueous. The ocean originally prevailed everywhere. Then, by degrees, in the Silurian period, The tops of the mountains began to appear. The islands emerged, then disappeared in partial deluges, reappeared, became settled, formed continents, till at the end of the length of the earth became geographically arranged, as we see it in the present day. The solid had wrested from the liquid 37,657 square miles, equal to 12,960 millions of acres. The shape of the continents allows us to divide the waters into 5 great portions: the Arctic or frozen ocean, the Antarctic or frozen ocean, the Indian, Atlantic, and the Pacific Oceans. The Pacific Ocean extends from the north to south between 2 polar circles, and from the east to west from Asia and Americas over the extent of 145 degrees of longitude. It is the quietest of seas. Its currents are broad and slow. It has medium tides and abundant rain. Such was the ocean that my fate destined me first to travel under these strange conditions. "Sir," said Captain Nemo, "we will, if you please, take our bearings and fix the starting point of this voyage. It is 11:45, and I will go again to the surface." The captain pressed an electric clock 3 times. The pumps began to drive, and water from the tanks began to exit. The needle of the manometer marked by a different pressure the ascent of the Nautilus, then it stopped. "We have arrived," said the captain. I went to the central staircase, which opened onto the platform, clambered up the iron steps, and found myself on the upper part of the Nautilus. The platform was only 3 feet out of the water. The front and back of the Nautilus was of that spindle shape which caused it justly to be compared to a cigar. I noticed that the iron plates, slightly offering each other, resembled the shell which clothed the bodies of our large terrestrial reptiles. It explained to me how natural it was, in spite of all the glasses, that this boat should have been taken for a marine mammal. Toward the middle of the platform, the long boat, half buried in the hull of the vessel, formed a slight excrescence. Fore and aft rose 2 cages of medium height with inclined sides, and partly closed by thick lenticular glasses. One destined for the steersman, who directed the Nautilus, and the other containing a brilliant lantern to give light on the road. The sea was beautiful, the sky pure. Scarcely could the long vehicle feel the broad undulations of the ocean. The light breeze from the east rippled the surface of the water. The horizon, free from fog, made observations easy. Nothing was in sight. Not a quicksand, not an island. A vast desert. Captain Nemo, by the help of his sextant, took the altitude of the sun, which ought to give us the latitude. He waited for some moments till the disk touched the horizon. Whilst taking observations, not a muscle moved. The instrument could not have been more motionless in the hand of marble. 12 o'clock, sir," said he. "When you like." I cast a last look upon the sea, slightly yellowed by the Japanese coast, and descended into the saloon. "And now, sir, I leave you to your studies," added the captain. "Our course is east-northeast. Our depth is 26 fathoms. Here are maps on a large scale by which you may follow it. The saloon is at your disposal, and, with your permission, I will retire." Captain Nemo bowed, and I remained alone, lost in thoughts all bearing on the commander of the Nautilus. For a whole hour I was deep in these reflections, seeking to pierce this mystery so interesting to me. Then my eyes fell upon a vast planisphere spread upon the table, and I placed my finger on the very spot where the given latitude and longitude crossed. The sea has its large rivers like the continents. They are special currents known by their temperature and their color. The most remarkable of these, known by the name the Gulf Stream. Science has decided on the globe of the direction of 5 principal currents: one in the North Atlantic, the second in the South, a third in the North Pacific, and a fourth in the South, a fifth in the southern Indian Ocean. It is even probable that a sixth current existed at one time or another in the North Indian Ocean when the Caspian or Aral seas formed but one vast sheet of water. At this point indicated on the planisphere, one of these currents was rolling. The Kuro Sivo of the Japanese, the Black River, which, leaving the Gulf of Bengal, where it is warmed by the perpendicular rays of the tropical sun, crossed the Straits of Malacca along the coast of Asia, turns into the North Pacific to the Aleutian Islands, carrying with it trunks of camphor trees and other indigenous productions, and edging the waves of the ocean with the pure indigo of its warm water. It is this current that the Nautilus was to follow. I followed it with my eye, saw it lose itself in the vastness of the Pacific, and felt myself drawn with it, when Ned Land and Conseil appeared at the door of the saloon. My two brave companions remained petrified at the sight of the wonders spread before them. "Where are we? Where are we?" exclaimed the Canadian. "In the museum at Quebec?" "My friends," I answered, making a sign for them to enter, "you are not in Canada, but on board the Nautilus, 50 yards below the level of the sea. But, Monsieur Arnaud," said Ned Land, "can you tell me how many men there are on board? 10, 20, 50, 100? I cannot answer you, Mr. Land. It is better to abandon for a time all idea of seizing the Nautilus or escaping from it. This ship is a masterpiece of modern industry, and I should be sorry not to have seen it. Many people would accept the situation forced upon us, if only to move amongst such wonders. So be quiet and let us try to see what passes around us." "See!" exclaimed the harpooner. "But we can see nothing in this iron prison. We are walking, we are sailing blindly." Ned Land had scarcely pronounced these words when all was suddenly darkness. The luminous ceiling was gone, and so rapidly that my eyes received a painful impression. We remained mute, not stirring, and not knowing what the surprise awaited us. Whether agreeable or disagreeable, a sliding noise was heard. One would have said that panels were working at the sides of the Nautilus. "It is the end," said Ned Land. Suddenly light broke at each side of the saloon through two oblong openings. The liquid masses appeared vividly lit up by the electric gleam. Two crystal plates separated us from the sea. At first I trembled, as I thought that this frail partition might break, but the strong bands of copper bound them, giving an almost infinite power of resistance. The sea was distinctly visible for a mile all around the Nautilus. What a spectacle! What pen can describe it? I could paint the effects of the light through those transparent sheets of water, and the softness of the successive graduations from the lower to the superior strata of the ocean. We know the transparency of the sea, that its clearness is far beyond that of rock water. The mineral and organic substances which it holds in suspension heightens its transparency. Its certain parts of the ocean at the Antilles, under 75 fathoms of water, can be seen with surprising clearness, a bed of sand. The penetrating power of the solar rays does not seem to cease for a depth of 150 fathoms. But in this middle fluid traveled over by the Nautilus, the electric brightness was produced even in the bosom of the waves. It was no longer luminous water, but liquid light. On each side a window opened into the unexplored abyss. The obscurity of the saloon showed to advantage the brightness outside, and we looked out of this pure crystal had been the glass of an immense aquarium. "You wish to see, friend Ned? Well, you see now." "Curious, curious," muttered the Canadian, who, forgetting his ill temper, seemed to submit to some irresistible attraction, and one would come further than this to admire such a sight. Ah, thought I to myself, I understand the life of this man. He has made a world apart for himself, in which he treasures all his great wonders. For 2 whole hours my aquatic army escorted the Nautilus. During their games, their bounds, while rivaling each other in their beauty, brightness, and velocity, I distinguished the green labre, the banded mullet, marked by a double line of black, the round-tailed goby, of a white color with violet spots on the back, the Japanese succumbus, a beautiful mackerel of those seas with a blue body and silvery head, the brilliant Azores, whose name alone defies description, some banded spares, with variegated fins of blue and yellow, the woodcocks of the sea, some specimens of which attain a yard in length, Japanese salamanders, spider lampreys, serpents 6 feet long, with eyes small and lively, and huge mouth bristling with teeth, with many other species. Our imagination was kept at its height. Interjections followed quickly on each other. Ned named the fish, and Conseil classed them. I was in ecstasies with the vivacity of the movements, the beauty of their forms. Never had it been given to me to surprise these animals, alive and at liberty in their natural element. I will not mention all the varieties which passed before my dazzled eyes, all the collection of the seas of China and Japan. These fish, more numerous than the birds of the air, came, attracted, no doubt, by the brilliant focus of the electric light. Suddenly there was daylight in the saloon. The iron panels closed again, and the enchanting vision disappeared. But for a long time I dreamt until my eyes fell on the instruments hanging on the partition. The compass still showed the course to be north-northeast. The manometer indicated a pressure of 5 atmospheres, equivalent to a depth of 25 fathoms, and the electric log gave a speed of 15 miles an hour. I expected Captain Nemo, but he did not appear. The clock marked the hour of 5. Ned Land and Conseil returned to their cabin, and I retired to my chamber. My dinner was ready. It was composed of turtle soup, made of the most delicate hawksbills, of a smullet served with puff paste, the liver of which, prepared by itself, was almost as delicious as anything, and fillets of the Emperor Holocarnassus, the savor of which seemed to me superior even to salmon. I passed the evening reading and writing and thinking. Then sleep overpowered me, and I stretched myself on my couch of zostera and slept profoundly while the Nautilus was gliding rapidly through the current of the Black River. And that, my friends, is all for today. We will continue the story of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea tomorrow. Thank you all for joining me. Love to you all. This has been Indiana Homes.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.